Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm Omar, Khalid, but your host for the evening. And of course, today is the 16th of September 2021. These are the stories that we'll be talking about during the course of the show. We will begin with Prime Minister's visit to Tajikistan. This is a two-day official visit where he is going to participate in the meeting of the heads of states of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, of which Pakistan is a very important part. At the same time, he's also met with the Tajik president and the other meetings that we'll be discussing in our first segment. This is, we will begin our, of course, today's program with this two-day important visit of our Prime Minister Imran Khan, and he's accompanied by other important members of the government. Then in our second story, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk about the interview that our Prime Minister gave to the CNN, in which he talked about the Afghan situation, and he talked about incentivizing the new administration of the Afghan Taliban to bring the current crisis to an end, quote unquote, instead of trying to control Afghanistan from the outside. There were many important issues that the Prime Minister highlighted during the interview with the CNN, and we'll be talking about those points in detail in our second segment. Then we will be talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the sacrifices in the war against terror that Pakistan has made, 80,000 plus, and of course the number continues to increase. In the last few months, we've seen a number of such incidents that have happened in Waziristan, in Balochistan as well. In the latest incident, 7 soldiers of the Pakistan Army have embraced martyrdom and 5 terrorists were killed. How important is the National Action Plan in the wake of all of these incidents? This is going to be our third story of the day. And finally, we will talk about our not-so-friendly neighbor India and how certain voices are emanating from the entertainment industry of the country that talk about how Muslims are being marginalized and how the current BJP government is agenda-driven when it comes to the films or the television series that are now being produced, and how the government is backing a jingoistic agenda even now in the entertainment industry. That was not the case in the past. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the visit of our Prime Minister to Tajikistan. This is a two-day official visit of our Prime Minister. This is, of course, to take part in the meeting of the heads of state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This is the 20th meeting of the heads of state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that our Prime Minister is taking part in. Also accompanying the Prime Minister is the Minister for Information and Broadcasting Fawad Chaudhry Saab, also the Minister for Foreign Affairs Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, Ali Zaidi Saab, Razak Daud Saab, the National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf Saab, and all of these people, of course, this signals the importance of the ties that Pakistan also considers as far as Tajikistan is concerned, and also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Prime Minister also met with the Kazakh president during this visit to Tajikistan, and also addressed the business forum in which he talked with the businessmen from both the countries, that is Tajikistan and Pakistan, and highlighted the importance of cooperation in the business and economic sector between the two countries. This, of course, we know not only is Pakistan trying to intensify and broaden the cooperation with other countries, of which Tajikistan is a member, but also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that is extremely important as far as all the different events that are occurring in the region, including the latest situation emanating from Afghanistan. Now let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the interview that our Prime Minister Imran Khan gave to the CNN very recently. He talked about the latest situation in Afghanistan, and he talked about Pakistan's role as well as the role of other global powers. More in the following report.
Peace and stability in Afghanistan is imperative to realize sustainable regional security order and to unleash geo-economic potential of the region. Preaching this strategic pragmatism, Pakistan has been persistently pressing the international community to engage with Afghan Taliban. In an interview with the US-based media giant CNN, Premier Imran Khan reiterated Pakistan's position on Afghanistan by pressing the world to incentivize the interim Taliban government and push them in the right direction.
The biggest concern are refugees. The second worry is terrorism. If there is chaos in Afghanistan, if there's not stability there, then we have these two major problems looming in front of us. We are the country that is going to suffer the most. If you do not help the people of Afghanistan right now, international community does not help them, what choice have we got?
The Prime Minister debunked the fatal misconception that Afghanistan could be controlled from outside and emphasized that Taliban also want to forge inclusive government and human rights in their context as clearly they want international acceptability. Premier Khan's interview surfaced as world powers debate whether and under what conditions to recognize the new government in Kabul dominated by the Taliban. In an address to foreign media in Islamabad, Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf urged the international community not to repeat past mistakes. Moeed Yusuf categorically pressed the world to engage with the Taliban's caretaker government in Afghanistan or risk a return to the instability. Islamabad had persistently pleaded the world to avert humanitarian crisis in war-ravaged country as the country battles dire economic meltdown followed by chaotic events of post-US exit. On Monday, several countries pledged more than $1.1 billion in food aid at a United Nations conference to address immediate poverty and hunger concerns in Afghanistan. Prime Minister Imran Khan embarked on two-day visit to Tajikistan capital Dushanbe today to attend a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at which the situation in Afghanistan is expected to figure prominently.
I will talk more about Prime Minister's points that were highlighted during his interview with the CNN. We've been joined by Shahid Kiani Sahab. He's a former ambassador. Kiani Sahab, thank you and welcome to this segment of Newsroom.
Thank you for having me.
Kiani Sahab, let's begin with all the different points that were highlighted by the Prime Minister during his interview with the CNN. Let's begin with incentivizing the Afghan Taliban's new administration instead of controlling it from the outside. Hasn't this been the case in the past? And do you feel the world powers understand the importance of incentivizing the Afghan Taliban government instead of continuing to control as they have done in the past from through external measures or through indirect measures?
First of all, let me say to you, let me start by the background. I was absolutely surprised at Mr. Blinken's, the U.S. Secretary of State's appearance in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee just 2 days back, in which he tried to pin down Pakistan as we are being responsible for what happened in Afghanistan. There are two things. First of all, United States was an occupying force. Now, did we tell the people who were fighting the U.S. forces to go and fight against the American forces? We did not. The Afghans or any XYZ people, like in Vietnam, they oppose occupation. The second thing is, the United States now does not want to talk to the Taliban, but the fact is that you consider Taliban as important, rather the most important stakeholder in Afghanistan, to negotiate with them. You signed an agreement. Now, what is the problem? Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab clearly said that you have to talk to them. You can't force them to the wall. You did it in 1990. They will be in civil war, and we will be the ones. And he was absolutely right. That are we you're telling, you are penalizing us. The thing is that we have, for the last maybe more than 40 years, but for the last 10, 15 years, our people, the armed forces people, the security, the police, and the common man has suffered at the hands of the terrorists, and we are fighting a war.
But Kiani Sahab, let's talk about the US-Pakistan relations, which were also discussed in this interview by the CNN of Prime Minister Imran Khan. You talked about Anthony Blinken. He also said we will reassess the ties that the US has with Pakistan. Isn't this new wine in an old bottle, as the expression says? Haven't we already seen that in the past? And not once, but more than once, whenever the interest of the United States wanes, it starts to reassess, quote unquote, its ties with Pakistan.
The thing is, as they say, tyranny of geography, that we have 2,400 kilometers of border with Afghanistan. It's not our fault. Geopolitical location, we didn't choose it. It is here. And we have tried our level best in the last maybe 70 years to have normal relationship with Afghanistan. No brotherly, that doesn't exist. The interests of two states dictate that. And we have tried our best in these for the last now maybe like 5, 6, 7 years to improve our relations, to even, the military and political leadership have visited many times to Afghanistan. But the Afghan leadership, unfortunately led by Mr. Ghani, would come here, sign agreement, talk to us, to the leaders, and then go back and start doing things which was totally counterproductive to the relationship, or as I say, the the basis of coexistence. They didn't understand it. And many times we had showed them proof of the Indian sponsored NGOs working on the borders and what they were doing with the TTP and others, and we have been suffering. Even yesterday you could see how many people or this morning I think they about 5-7 of our soldiers laid down their lives. So are American telling us that, are we responsible for that? Are we
Of
telling the
course.
Taliban
In fact,
to
Pakistan has been the victim with 80,000
absolutely,
plus deaths in the two
absolutely,
important wars
absolutely.
against terror that Pakistani forces
Yeah,
and the Pakistani people have fought against these very elements that have been trying to create disharmony and instability in the region, including our country. Now, when the Prime Minister said it was a fallacy that Afghanistan could be controlled from
absolutely.
outside, and he said, quote unquote, history showed no puppet government in Afghanistan is supported by the people. Does the US or do the powers that be understand this perspective?
They don't want to understand. Meaning, do you think you need a lecture on the foreign policy as to how you should dictate? You have seen what has happened. United States, you know, it's very unfortunate, but since 1945, 1939, till today, United States has been in war. Second World War, and then the Korean, then the Vietnam, and then first Afghan and the second. Meaning, there's no end to it. Iraq, you'll see, Syria, even now Libya. Now, these are places where these countries should have been left to themselves to fend for themselves. Now, coming back to Afghanistan, let me just say to you, at this time, being logical, I'm just enlarging what the Prime Minister of Pakistan has said, meaning at this time, there's a humanitarian crisis, stark looking at the people of Afghanistan. Taliban, unfortunately, have no experience of governance. So let's not blame them. But at the same time, yes, we want an inclusive government, but at this time, two things can go together. You help them, assist them on humanitarian grounds, give them food, money, and everything. But at the same time, keep a dialogue with them and say to them that, listen, this is not Afghanistan 20 years back, this is Afghanistan of 2021. You have to allow women to lead their lives, make them part. But if you make them conditional, I tell you, things will go bad.
Of course.
So this
I
is the
get your
time to
point
have
of
a
view, Shahid
negotiation.
Kiani, but at the same time, when our Prime Minister said that Afghanistan is at a historical crossroad and that there is a need for an inclusive government in Afghanistan, do you foresee in the coming months an inclusive government in Afghanistan? And as you said, the Afghan Taliban are not as well prepared to govern Afghanistan, or maybe do not have as much of an experience as the other governments have had in the past. Do you feel that they will live and learn with time, and maybe we will see inclusivity in the coming months?
Yes, we will have to give them time. As I said, a dialogue has to be initiated with the Taliban to tell them. Because let me tell you, just share with you, in modern what you call revolutions which have come, Iran, and then if you go a little further away, China, all the revolutionary governments, while they fought with weapons, they had a cadre of people who had experience of running the party and running the government. Here, unfortunately, they do not have. You have to give them time, but at the same time, there has to be a dialogue, and we have to be a little firm with them also that look, we are giving this money or assistance will only come to you, and once you are recognized. Fortunately, unfortunately, the Western countries are making it conditional that they have to be inclusive government. But the thing is, would they be able to do? Would they be able to do it? I am optimistic, but they have to be given time. First is humanitarian crisis, which has to be overcome.
All right. Well, you talked about women's rights, of course, and this is something that is being highlighted in the foreign media, that the current government will not give the rights to the women and, of course, education, as has happened in the past when they were in the government. Now, our Prime Minister said it was a mistake to think someone from outside would give Afghan women their rights. Those rights have to be given by the current government. Again, should we wait for the current government of the Afghan Taliban to formulate a system of governance that will include women and giving them education and the right incentives?
You see, if you look at the Afghan history, you see many countries around the world have moved on. They've modernized, progressive. But unfortunately, Afghanistan, a landlocked country, which has a very strong tribal traditions, is unfortunately not been able to move. If you force these things on them, it shall not work. You have to have a dialogue with them. You have to tell them, recognition. Yeah, you see, my own optimism rests on this thing that these Taliban are those who have widely traveled. They have exposure to international, media. They are talking to the media. They negotiated with the only superpower. They have traveled. They have lived abroad for so many years. I can only hope that they put the the welfare of their own people. You can't put 50% or 50% population behind doors, but at the same time you can only encourage them. You cannot force them. Nothing works in force. You see, Pakistan, our own history is that the British came to this country for 200 years back, and slowly and steadily we adopted their education, their way of living, and everything. And when the British left in 1947, we had some infrastructure. But here, unfortunately, nothing of that sort exists. What happened? People talk 40 years back. King Zahir Shah, when he was here, it was only in Kabul and one or two cities. Otherwise,
But Kiani
the
sir,
Afghanistan society is
to
the
cut
same.
things short, there is a certain elite in Afghanistan that has really benefited from the trillions and the billions of dollars that the US government gave to Afghanistan during its 20 years when it occupied Afghanistan. Now, there is a certain sect that has benefited enormously from that, but the normal people, the layman in Afghanistan has not. And this is what needs to be talked about, worked upon. Which brings me to the US and Pakistan. We see two different sides of the coin. On the one hand, we have Anthony Blinken and certain Democrats that are really criticizing Pakistan and want to reassess the ties between US and Pakistan. That is also has been said during the interview in CNN when the Prime Minister said that Joe Biden has not yet talked to him since he took power. On the other hand, we've got Chris Van Hollen, the US Senator, who also understands Pakistan's perspective and is backing Pakistan to a certain extent. There are two different perspectives, Shahid Kiani Saab, which will work in the longer end as far as Pak-US relations are concerned? Or do you feel that it's going to be a repeat of what we've seen in the 80s?
Most unfortunate is that Pakistan, United States, who were the best of the allies during the Cold War and during the first Afghan war, now we are, what is the basis of our relationship now? First, Mrs. Clinton has been seen transactional. Now it is only Afghanistan. Do you think only on one agenda, one issue, Afghanistan, would the whole relationship Pakistan and United States will go on? For God's sake. Do you think Afghanistan will remain on the agenda of the world till thy kingdom come, and in the Bible will say, and then all shall be done? You cannot have. Pakistan respects the United States being the sole superpower. Pakistan has very close relationship, trade, economic, political, other relationship. But I think the United States should, meaning when it says we're going to review our relationship, meaning I don't understand why. Meaning
all
what
right.
has gone wrong?
Which
that
brings
you
me
want
to the
do it?
last question, Shahid Kiani Saab. Trust deficit. This is also what our Prime Minister talked
Yeah.
about, trust deficit between the West and the Pakistan. Why is this this trust deficit between Pakistan and the West? What are the main concerns that both the West and Pakistan need to work on to further bridge those gaps?
You see, we are being blamed. First of all, it starts off that we are being blamed for the last now 20 years for the upsurge in the fighting in Afghanistan. Prime Minister, if you look at what the Prime Minister said, he said that, do you think we can bankroll the Taliban to fight against you? Where do we have the money? We are on an IMF lifeline. Do you think we have the money to bankroll these people? Not the least. We have now we have put the fenced the border. Absolutely correct way of doing it. But at the same time, we can only hope. We have not assisted the Taliban. We cannot do it. They are no more kids. You see that we can, take their finger and say, do that thing. They understand only one thing. They cannot stand their country being occupied by a foreign power. Full stop. How can we do this? Meaning, what should we tell them? You negotiated with them, you withdrew. You withdrew in a manner, meaning just before 15th, on the 12th or 13th of August, I remember President Biden saying, no, no, they will stay there.
Of course.
You have not said one thing, Omar, which I want to say to you. Had said it very in a different manner. Corruption. Look at the president of President Ghani. Just ran away from here. It was his job to stay here in the transitional period.
He was not the only one who ran away, sir.
So many of them. Leaders put their life for the welfare of their own people. You just ran away and left it. And let me be honest, since the Taliban have been here, I haven't seen any bloodshed. I don't want to, I'm not supporting them, but I'm saying to you that at this period, I think the people have heaved a sigh of relief in Afghanistan. Well, let's hope. But at the same time, the Taliban should be more reassuring to the people, because if the professionals leave the country, where would the country go?
That is true. One last question before we go. The refugee crisis that our Prime Minister has also talked about. We are hosting around 3 million refugees, and this refugee crisis has now come up again as an issue because of the current situation in Afghanistan. What will happen in your point of view?
You see, I was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when the first refugees started coming. It was 86 to 89. I remember the devastation caused by the refugees, the denuding the forests. Look at the environmental disaster we are facing. Humanitarian disaster, economic disaster, we are in no position to take. And I tell you one thing more. In the garb of refugees, if these terrorists also come part of it, where do we go? We have been...
This is a huge concern. This is a huge concern.
Absolutely.
And let's hope that the world understands this concern as well, Shahid Kiani Saab, and that, as Moeed Yusuf Saab has also said, that the world also engages the Taliban. Because until and unless you do not engage a government in Afghanistan, you cannot move forward as far as bringing economic stability or also stability as far as these incidents is concerned. Thank you very much, Shahid Kiani Saab, former ambassador, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Imran Khan's... Yes, you wanted to say something, sir. Sorry.
Just one thing.
Continue.
I hope our Prime Minister is attending a very, very important forum, SCO.
Yes,
I
sir.
think let's hope that during the SCO, this on the agenda, the Afghan crisis, let's hope some consensus, positive consensus involved on it.
Inshallah, let's hope so, sir. I am sure it will be one of the points of discussion. Thank you very much, Shahid Kiani Saab, to have joined us and to have talked to us about Afghanistan. Let's come to our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns Pakistan's sacrifices in the war against terror and incidents that have started to resurface since the last couple of months. In the last incident, 7 soldiers of the Pakistan Army have embraced martyrdom and 5 terrorists have been killed in an intelligence-based operation in South Waziristan. More in the following report.
Pakistan's unprecedented sacrifices in war on terror presents irrefutable evidence to demonstrate country's resolve against terrorism. In order to consolidate the hard-won gains against terrorist insurgency, Pakistan robustly played role of an honest broker in Afghan endgame. Despite facilitating peaceful transition of government post-US withdrawal from Afghanistan, terrorist violence has reared its ugly head again, which is manifested in escalating attacks upon security forces in tribal and border areas of country. According to the military's media wing, Inter-Services Public Relations, at least 7 soldiers of Pakistan Army embraced martyrdom during an intense exchange of fire with terrorists during an intelligence-based operation in Asman Manzar area of South Waziristan. 5 terrorists were also killed in the operation carried out on reported presence of militants in Asman Manzar. Earlier this month, at least 4 Frontier Corps officials were martyred and 18 others injured in a suicide attack near a checkpost on Quetta Mustang Road. The surge in terrorist violence is purportedly the fallout from chaotic strategic calculus of western neighbor Afghanistan, where enemy-sponsored terror networks are desperate to dilute Pakistan's resolve for stable political setup in Kabul. Pakistan has long drawn the international community's attention to how hostile intelligence agencies are helping Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, a major terrorist group, and its affiliates based in Afghanistan. Pakistan has paid a very heavy price to achieve peace and stability, and any attempt to destabilize the country is responded firmly.
I'll talk more about these terror incidents as well as a national action plan that has been in place since December of 2014. We've been joined by Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. another incident, we've talked about such incidents in the past as well, sir, but another incident resurfaces in South Waziristan. What are the root causes of these? Is it a trickling of elements from across the border? Is it sleeper cells that are already present in Pakistan that have been reactivated? Is it our not so friendly neighbor India that is now trying to forge some kind of new alliance or reinvigorate these terrorist elements? What is going on exactly that reacts and that, I mean, results in so many incidents happening in the last few months? Can you hear us? Well, let's talk about these incidents. The latest of the incident includes 7 soldiers of the Pakistan Army who embraced martyrdom, 5 terrorists who were killed during an intelligence-based operation in the Asman Manza area of South Waziristan. This was told by the ISPR on Wednesday. Sir, can you hear us?
Yes, it is loud and clear.
I hope you also listened to the introduction that I made as far as these terror incidents are concerned. What is happening? What is the reasoning behind an upsurge in these incidents since the last few months?
Thank you very much, Omar. It is, I personally feel this is because of those elements which are now desperate and present inside Pakistan. And they had hidden themselves for quite long. These are intelligence-based operation in which I'm sure armed forces and the intelligence agencies, soon they get the information, they go and they really hunt these terrorists who are hidden here and there, and they are making the desperate attacks. So as far as our neighbor India is concerned, there is no doubt that they are fully involved in it and they are trying their best, because the defeat they suffered in Afghanistan, I think in the political and military history of India, this would be the worst defeat they have ever suffered.
Of course, that is so true. But when you see the areas, the regions that are really engulfed in these incidents, there are 2, Waziristan and then Balochistan. The concentration of such incidents in the last few months has only been this. If you just go in the history, 7 soldiers recently, then of course 4 Frontier Corps officials were martyred, 18 others injured in Quetta's Mastung Road earlier this month. Last week, 2 Pakistani Army soldiers were martyred in an IED attack in North Waziristan. Then in August, 3 levies persons were martyred in Ziyarat district. In late May, in Quetta, 4 suspected members of a banned extremist organization, and we will talk about that as well, were killed in an intelligence-based operation as well in Akhbar area of the provincial capital. Now, when I just note all of these incidents, these are concentrated, as I said in the very beginning, in 2 regions of Pakistan, Waziristan and Balochistan. Are these the new hotbeds of these elements? All right, so as I was talking to Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, if we look at the spate of incidents that have been happening in the last few months, the recent one in which we just talked about, the 7 soldiers of the Pakistan Army embraced martyrdom and 5 terrorists were killed. This was an intelligence-based operation in the Asman Manza area of South Waziristan. Before that, there was another incident in which at least 4 Frontier Corps officials were martyred, 18 others injured in a suicide attack near a checkpost on Quetta's Mastung Road. Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, Waziristan and Balochistan are more or less the hotbeds of these incidents. Whether it be intelligence-based operations or other terrorist-related incidents that happen, they happen in these areas, and that we have seen in the last few months. Do you feel that these are, this is an infiltration from across the border? Do you feel these are sleeper cells that are already present here?
No, I personally feel, Omar, that these are those sleepers who are present there in Balochistan already. And these are those organizations which are really anti-Pakistan. They had an anti-state agenda, anti-Pakistan agenda. And there is absolutely no doubt that they are being backed by the hostile countries we have on our eastern side. Those who have suffered the worst, I have already talked about it, the worst defeat in their political and military history, or diplomatic history. Such incidents, they keep taking place in a country where the situation is, in our neighbor, the situation is rapidly changing. And there are certain major changes which are being taken place in the region. So as geostrategic location of Pakistan and the future role of Pakistan in Southeast Asia will certainly, ignite such type of incidences. which are being taken place. I personally feel that we should not be worried about it because I'm sure our agencies and the armed forces, they were very well prepared for this, and they had been fighting this for over last 16 years. And now they are carrying out the intelligence-based operation where they get the intelligence or where they get that there is some clue of the terrorists or those terrorists who are trying to harm this country, are trying to carry out such terrorist attacks where they want to create confusion, chaos in the region or in this country particularly. We're absolutely, I feel the government of Pakistan, the armed forces and the agencies, they are absolutely confident and they are handling these things. So whereas these martyrdoms are concerned, this happens because a lot of sacrifices the armed forces and the intelligence officers and their people they are making for this country. There is absolutely no doubt.
Let's talk about one of the elements that are involved in such incidents, and that is the TTP. Now, our Foreign Minister Shah Qureshi, while being interviewed by The Independent very recently, said that he was concerned over the release of the members of the TTP from Afghan prisons after the Afghan Taliban took over. At the same time, there's also talk of pardoning, giving a pardon to these elements of the TTP. What will work so that such incidents do not happen from elements such as the TTP? Do you feel pardoning them is a way forward? Do you feel some other strategy needs to be put into place?
Strategy is already in place. National Action Plan is not one-point plan. It has more than 20 points on it, agenda. And National Action Plan is working very well since its inception in 2014-15. And these are the elements which is the disgruntled elements. Even TTP is no more there in Pakistan. They have virtually diluted and they have gone with you, and I must say that. But we must not worry about it. There is complete strategy that is present with the those who are in the helm of the affair and those who are the strategists and making strategies against the terrorism or such type of incidences which are not good for the state as a whole.
All right. Sir, should we be afraid of cross-border attacks from Afghanistan by extremist elements that have all done that in the past as well? Or do you feel that the Afghan Taliban will be able to curtail these elements from infiltrating the border?
I think this will be too early to really conclude, or this will be too early to say that will that happen or not. We are very well secured, and our border is very well sealed now. I'm sure the forces, those who are deployed there, they are alert. And even if somebody will try to play nasty from across the border, they'll also be given a bloody nose the way the Pakistan armed forces have been given to the enemies of Pakistan and the state.
All right, Brigadier Amjad also, when we look at these incidents that have started from May or even a little before and continue, and we are now in the month of September, do you foresee a reduction in such incidents in the future? And do you foresee also our armed forces, as they've been doing, this was also an intelligence-based operation that happened in this recent incident. Do you feel also that our armed forces are vigilant and understand where these sleeper cells are located, where these elements are located currently in these regions, so that they can continue to curtail them as they have been doing?
Excellently vigilant, I must say that. They are on it, and 24/7 they keep their eyes open, they keep their ears open. They are totally, vigilant, and they'll not let this happen anywhere in the country. When they go for the armed forces, when they go for any intelligence-based operation, it means that they are continuously getting intelligence from their sources, and they are supposed to do that. And they are continuously in touch with those people, those who give them the information about such type of elements present anywhere in the country. We should absolutely not be afraid of anything. We should absolutely be confident enough. We are now, alhamdulillah, we are on a very good trajectory as far as our economic development is concerned, our national security is concerned. Our borders are very well safe, and they are being guarded with very, very professional people and state-of-the-art armed forces.
Thank you very much, and we are also extremely proud of our vigilant armed forces and our agencies that have been stopping all such incidents from happening, and of course the latest being this intelligence-based operation. It is due to these operations that these elements, these sleeper cells are stopped at the right time. Thank you very much, Brigadier Amjad Ali Saab, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the National Action Plan and of course its implementation in letter and spirit by our government and by our forces and our agencies. And let's now come to our last story of the day, and that concerns jingoistic attitude by the current government of the BJP as far as the entertainment industry is concerned. If there are a lot of reports that have emanated from the international circles as well as from the Indian circles about how there is a new trend that is coming in the entertainment industry of India that is extremely anti-Pakistan and anti-Muslim. This is also something that has been highlighted by Naseer-ud-din Shah in an interview that he gave to the NDTV, in which he said that the Bollywood industry is now no longer free of Islamophobia and religious discrimination, and now it is being encouraged by the government to make more pro-establishment films. He also gave the example of Nazi government in Germany and how it too used film to spread its ideology, and he said that the BJP government, as we've already talked about also, it's the same ideology, the RSS ideology is the same as that of the Nazi ideology. He said many Muslims in the industry do not speak up in fear of facing harassment. And so there is a new trend that emerges now also in the entertainment industry of our not so friendly neighbor, in which the minorities such as the Muslims are not only sidelined but also harassed if they start to talk about these pro-establishment so-called quote-unquote films and entertainment elements that are being produced by the different sections of the entertainment industry in India. A point to ponder for a country that calls itself the largest democracy in the world. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that of course concern you, us and Pakistan. But of course, as I always end every day, today also I'd like to highlight the fact that we need not only to vaccinate ourselves at the earliest if we haven't. If it's the first jab, get yourself the second jab. If you have the two jabs, then at least continue to follow the standard operating procedures. Keep following, keep wearing your mask in crowded places, avoid crowded places, keep washing your hands, and be very vigilant of your surroundings. That is how we'll prevent our country from the further spread of this pandemic. With that, we come to an end. Allah Hafiz. We'll see you tomorrow.